Yo, it's day two webs of our Classroom OS series where we've kind of been exploring how you use your the tools that you have if you're in the local school district in order to maximize and augment your effectiveness in your classroom. And today we focused on architecture and what the structure of their course look like, their routines and procedures, the physical layout of the classroom, how their lessons were conducted, all that wonderful stuff. What were your just immediate thoughts on how things went today?
Yeah, something I really value is the reflection piece and how that reflection piece kind of sets the stage for the bigger ideas of what we build on top of it. It kind of reminds me actually of a video I saw last week where a guy was talking about how he had started building a new business and he was like 6 weeks in and had quote nothing to show for it. Of course, that was like oh, click on this and find out why I said that kind of a thing, but the whole thesis behind it was the idea that you put in all the work to figure out what the identity is of your business so that going forward as you make decisions, your decisions are guided by that very strong understanding of that identity, right? It makes decision making a lot easier because you know who you are and you know what you've built and you know where you're headed with it. And I feel like that it feels very similar to what we've been doing over the last couple of days. Is like if you're very firm in knowing who you are, what kind of teacher you are, what the procedures in your classroom are, everything you build on top of that becomes pretty easy because you have done the, like you call it, blue collar work. You've done the blue collar work of really reflecting on what makes you the teacher that shows up in that classroom every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and the blue collar work is called such because that's the work that you tend to want to avoid. That's the not sexy work. It's not the flashy stuff, but it's the work that the flashy stuff is based on. And if you avoid that, I think some of the participants today realized that because they didn't finish either the two documents, and some of the questions that we got were, oh, if I finish this, what happens to the Gemini notebook? Oh, it updates because it's going to have more information and therefore it have better, more accurate information in order to make actions from. So that was cool. What was your most what was the most interesting aspect of today's session for you?
I think toward the end, someone said, I wish I had had this when I was a first year teacher. And that was it was kind of surprising and also not at the same time. It was surprising because one, we're only 2 days in. And one of the things I always worry about when we do professional development sessions is, am I going to give people something that they find valuable? Right? I always worry about that. I want to make sure that people walk away from RPD sessions feeling like, hey, this was worth my time. That is the most important thing to me, is that someone walks away feeling like this is really worth my time. Because I know I always hated walking out of a PD session and feeling like, why did I just spend a day or 2 days or whatever on this when it doesn't feel like it markedly changed anything that I do?
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting to hear not just that, hey, I do find this worth my time, but I wish I had had it as a first year teacher. I wish I had had this foundation as a first year teacher. That was really surprising to me, but in the best kind of way.
Interesting. To me, it was the we have a small but mighty crew. And I think the most interesting thing about this is that to see their faces once they got, even though they didn't finish all of the documentation and the foundation of their system, to see their faces when they put the dry prompt in and then put the prompt that was like augmented with their information. just to see that difference in their face, that was like, yeah, this is actually legit. And it really portends very interesting things going forward in terms of, there was one particular participant in particular who yesterday was talking about the length of the prompts and having to be super specific and writing 2 paragraphs and things like that. And to demonstrate that the power was really in the grounding, and then the prompt can kind of be just natural language if you need it to be. That was kind of a powerful takeaway for me today, because it doesn't work when I did it. It worked when they did it as well.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah, I get it though, because I think, this is evolving. We talked about this a bit yesterday. Like we're seeing this evolve in real time. So we're learning new techniques in real time, which is what a friend of mine talks about, how like you have people out there who are like AI best practices. There are no AI best practices, friend. This technology is like 2 years old. Like, what are you talking about AI best practices? But at one point, like 6 months ago, yeah, prompting, we thought that was the way to go. But as the technology has evolved and our understanding of how to work with it best has evolved, you don't have to invest, essays in your prompts don't have to be essays. If you have the access and ability to attach the context to it so that you're not repeating those same things over and over again.
Yeah, I think that that's been hopefully something that the participants have taken away from just the first 2 days that we've done things. We're going to do like wildly interesting things on Wednesday and Thursday, based on, again, just this very elementary concept here. If you had something that was kind of a, I don't know, a surprise, a nugget of information that you were like, hey, this is something that going forward, if we do this again, there's something we need to keep in mind. Like, what was that thing?
I think this time as opposed to last time, so we kind of held off with the hey, this is you give it vanilla, you give it with context and the difference. I think showing that up front and talking about it up front, and then having them get to that point earlier than last time, I think that has made a big difference. And I think that'll hopefully make the rest of the week even more impactful than it was the last time. So I think that was a good change. What was the rest of your question?
Any nugget like that, kernels of information to like plant in this process, so that the next time we do this, it's like, oh, okay, cool. I think so. One of the things, making sure that the kind of the magic trick of, oh, look, this is where you're going to be by Friday. And actually they're there by Wednesday. They were really there by Tuesday if we really wanted them to be.
Yeah.
Just allowing them to see, here's this plain prompt, and not to underscore what you just said even more, but the power of, no, you're not going to give it some super distinct and precise prompt. You're just going to give it, make me a lesson plan template. Great, that is it. That's all the information you're going to give it. And if your tool can't, with grounding, use the information you have seeded in order to build the lesson plan template, then you need to get another tool at this particular point, because again, constantly writing a master's thesis in order to get artifacts is not something you need to do right now.
I don't necessarily think you need to get a different tool. I think sometimes you need to learn to use the tool differently. And sometimes it's circumstances that prevent you from being able to add that context. But I think it is worth questioning. Like, if you are finding yourself writing 3-paragraph essays for every prompt, like, there's probably a better way to do it. If you follow us on here, we will share that information and have shared that information. I was really surprised by the breadth of experience and the breadth of subject areas and grade levels that are covered, and how it seems like one of the things we talk about is it being like the use of the tool and your practice being a reflection of who you are and a reflection of your context and your circumstances. And I find that with every time we do this, it seems to be more and more true that not to be like super cliche, but the what you put into it is what you get out of it. And so if you understand your own context well, if you know where you're at in your career and you're strong in your understanding of who you are as a teacher, or if you're not, but you're willing to reflect on it, explore that, um, and think about it, you can get a lot out of it because you are the master of your context. You are the one who best understands your classroom, your students, your grade level, your subject matter. And all we're doing is giving you the structure to explore that deeply and reap the benefits of exploring it deeply alongside using these tools.
Again, this is a very verbose group. Was there anything said in conversation today you're kind of like, oh, okay, wow, that was like a great.
I love hearing all the different stories that they have from their different experiences in different subject matters, living in different places, growing up in different places. We've had so many good conversations over the last couple of days about just like our experiences as students when we were kids, then growing into who we are as teachers now, what our experience has been both in the corporate world, because we do have a teacher or two that has worked outside of education and this is their second career. It's just so fascinating to me, like a couple of years ago, I started thinking about how humans are like novels, right? Like we're all like an epic novel of all of our lives' adventures. And so I think about each person I meet now as like their own little epic novel. So it's been really fun to like, peruse the pages and hear the stories of the things that have made them into the teachers that showed up on Monday. I've really enjoyed that a lot. And we've had the time to kind of wander a bit, but we still get through the content we're meaning to get through for that day. And the time goes by so quickly. And they ask such good questions.
It has been very interesting. The talking shop is always interesting. Like it's if to barbershop talk is a lot of what we're doing. Sitting and everyone is in the same profession. We've got some people, we have one participant that has 20 plus years in the classroom. We've got two relative newbies. We've got a guy who's kind of mid-career. I did almost 20 years. You did 10 years. Like we have like this very varied the experience in the room is interesting, but the conversation that we had about participation and expectations today it's still one that stayed with me as I was driving back home. And it is very interesting. Again, this we believe in that this is osmosis lots of times of, hey, they're XYZ years old. Therefore, they should already be able to do this thing. And I shouldn't have to actually demonstrate how to do the thing that I want them to do. And when they don't do it, I get frustrated that, oh, you're so-and-so years old. You should be able to do the thing. And that's kind of crazy.
So that's funny too, because like that's not something unique to education, shooting all over the place. Where you feel like, oh, just because this person is in this role, or to your point, like is a certain age or whatever, they should have these skills. But the reality is like they may not. And you can wish and hope and want all you want that and think that they should have these skills, but you're wasting a lot of time in hoping that the osmosis is going to take, I guess, instead of just scaffolding them so that they actually can be successful. Like the more time, because I've seen this with leaders in corporate as well, where they think someone should know how to do a thing. And so they spend their time berating them for not knowing how to do the thing. When like, if you had just invested that time in upskilling them and giving them those skills so that they can be successful. There's a lady, I don't think I sent you her video. There's a lady I saw on TikTok who was talking about um, if you truly care about your students, if you want to demonstrate love for them, the best way to do that is to give them the skills that you know that they are missing so that they can be successful. And I think some of the skills that fall through the cracks are like product or project management, knowing how to break down a project into small pieces. What was the other one we were talking about earlier? It was project management and
collaborative group dynamics.
oh yes, collaboration, right? And like when you have your students work in groups, you don't just chuck them into, hey, for random humans, go do this project, right? You assign them specific roles. Why do you do that?
I mean, I don't think lots of people do that.
So, no, but why do you specifically
do why that? Do I particularly do?
Yeah.
I want it to be very clear what responsibilities everyone in the group has without having them the cognitive load of having to decide who's going to do what and how it's going to look. Making it super clear this person's role is going to be this aspect of the thing, but your role is interdependent with this other person's role. So you can't do all your work without conversing with this other person about this thing. And at the end, there needs to be someone who has that helps with the cohesion of all four of the parts, so that this thing is a product that somebody actually wants to explore and experience. But I utilize my class as that by default. Again, not a big, huge fan of independent work in the grand scheme of things. I think it's very important that you have young people who are working collaboratively and codependently toward product-based outcomes that still have individual accountability as they go forward and are able to reflect on, this was my role, this is what I was supposed to do, this I thought I was successful by, or I feel that I can improve by X, Y, and Z. But just kind of speaking to your experience, how often are you working solo dolo in the job?
Yeah, like never. And actually that was one of the things that was really culture shock about going from being in education to being in the corporate world, in tech in particular, I think, is that I went from a largely isolated, it's just me in my classroom with my students and the occasional, PLC once or twice a week, to no, you are collaborating with these people, and in some cases pairing for hours a day, like right next to each other, in order to put out this product that, to your point, it takes different people in different roles and then one person who kind of brings the whole cohesive vision together for it to get delivered. So that's interesting because like that reflects what actual practice in my experience has been in tech, at least. I don't know if like banking is like that.
Yeah, that's I mean, banking isn't like, I mean, there is no job, even tennis and golf, you have a coach, you've got a caddy, you've got a lot of folks who are necessary for you to meet whatever level you're trying to get to, or level of success you're trying to get to. So being the role model of that as early as possible, I think is important. So that was interesting. It was also interesting you mentioned before, we have somebody who's, we got a graphic design person, we've got a video game person, we've got an ELA person, we've got a PE teacher, there's a 6th grade ELA teacher. Like we've got people who are looking at this thing from different vantage points, and yet the system works regardless of their perspective on what they need to teach and I need to teach it. And I think that is the mark of a system that works, is that it works regardless of who's in the room. If you were a teacher who happened to be in the room while we were doing this process, how would you approach your school year knowing you had this particular tool in your back pocket? Like, what would be things that perhaps you would have done differently, or would you do differently in that you have this particular system?
I feel like that's a better question for you as someone who's actually going back into the classroom.
Well, I mean, I think there is a lot of confidence I would have to try different things because I could always translate them into my own network, my own system, my own lexicon, because I would have the structure set up to do so. And so, one of the things we're going to experiment with on Thursday is we're going to throw something, the Portrait of Nevada Learner, that you've never looked at before, and see if it can translate that information into something that makes sense given what you've already told the system. And how would it converse about this unknown thing in a way that's going to allow, hopefully, participants to see that if you go into a PD session this school year about this thing, small group instruction, differentiation, you name the cliche thing that people do PD about, and I don't have an understanding of that thing, but I have a PDF document that has the step-by-step on how to do things. I've taken a picture of what a classroom looks like that has this thing. I've written down copious notes about, okay, this is the vocabulary and definitions that are necessary, and these are experts that I might want to read. Like, how can you feed that into your machine so then it goes and it really digests that information and regurgitates something that makes sense in your context?
And it reminds me of a friend of mine said a while back, because I was talking about how I was kind of struggling with some of the things, some things, in terms of how to both manage what we do as the intelligent hoodlums and also kind of participate in what we do. And she said, "Oh, that's because you are trying to be the admin and the talent. And so you're kind of wearing two hats. You need to focus on just being the talent." And I feel like what the Classroom OS system does for teachers is it takes off some of that admin load and lets them focus on being the talent. So the thing that teachers really care about in terms of, spending their time with students and differentiating instruction and doing the teaching part that we all really love, it lets you focus on that a lot more because you've front loaded all of these things to your sort of virtual assistant so that all of the more tedious pieces of being a teacher can fall away and be handed off. But they still show up and are produced in a way that aligns to your philosophy, your, I'm sure we'll find out either tomorrow or the next day, your design system, your, color palette, your fonts, your style. It still reflects the way that you show up in the classroom, but it isn't nearly as difficult to produce something that looks and sounds and feels like it's aligned to your classroom.
Absolutely. I think that's the versatility of the system. Once you understand it, is I can make this thing do what I want it to, really. That is the beauty of the concept, is that we're going to give you just the basic stuff, but you could really do some pretty wild stuff if you wanted to get it set up that way. I mean, there's any number of variations on this thing that you could really like go ham on. There was so the ELA teacher is they're very energetic. They're very curious.
Mm-hmm.
If you were that person's mentor,
mm-hmm.
what would be things that you would work with that person on?
That's a really good question. I think, well, like one of the conversations we had today was about the importance of structure, right? Like we talked about Harry Wong, First Days of School, seminal text for teachers. and making sure that you have those foundations down and you have those kind of processes sound. Because I think, to the point that someone else made, once you have those foundations solid, then you can start to experiment a little bit and push the boundaries a little bit of where those guidelines are set, because you have that foundation to return to. You've set that strong pattern of behaviors. I think I'd probably have conversations very much like we've had over the last couple of days, like reflectively on, okay, well, how did you think that went? What was missing from, if I don't know, like let's say I observed a lesson, right? Like, how did you feel that went? What did you feel was missing? What do you want to experiment with next time? And depending on if it had that strong foundation or not, would direct where the conversation went next. But I would really emphasize getting those foundational practices down. Not only foundational practices from the perspective of the teacher and how the teacher shows up to the classroom, but also the foundational practices that set the stage for learners to be able to show up to the classroom, and making sure that as you're kind of experimenting with the different ways of doing things, you're thinking about, and I guess this is pulling a bit from my tech background, if you're going to do an experiment, set boundaries for your experiment. When is it going to start? When is it going to end? And how are you going to evaluate whether it succeeded or not? I think that would be some of my advice. What would you say to them? What would you focus on? What would be important?
They remind me a lot of myself in lots of ways, in terms of the boundless creativity, and I want to be human, and like it's necessary to create the structures despite the fact that you think they are rigid, and it's, oh my goodness, this is going to restrict students from doing XYZ. It's not. The predictability of structure,
who taught you those structures? Where did you, so if you showed up to the classroom and you were, no, we're going to do, like, who in your background was the one who kind of knocked you upside the head and said?
My first year of teaching was kind of like, I'm just going to do what I did. And like, it was lots of smiles, but very little in terms of me feeling accomplished as a fourth grade teacher at that particular point.
Mm-hmm.
The second year, my second year of teaching, Hurricane Katrina happened. It destroyed our school, and we had to integrate the Caucasian Catholic school that happened to be or the larger Caucasian Catholic school that happened to be in the town. And that is when I saw teaching up front daily that was highly structured. It might not have been as creative as I'd liked, but I saw that kids were able to be successful because they knew what was coming next, right? I taught too much like a horror movie. Like, hey, you're running and you don't know when the monsters will get you. Like, that's great for, for thrills, but like, you really want to have a situation where things are predictable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the predictability allows you to access the creativity in your imagination. And so that was one of the first steps.
I think that's a hard thing to get to. And I think there's a parallel to parenting, whether that's an actual parenting or dog parenting, because I kind of went through something similar with my dogs where I thought, I need to give them maximum freedom. And, and one of the first things my trainer said was, we need more structure. We need more like predictability. They need to know that, hey, this is when this is happening. This is when this is happening. You need to have more structures in place so that they can get to a place where things are a bit more free and flexible, but they're also confident. And I feel like it's very similar when you're talking about working with students. You build that structure so that they know what to predict. And from a learning sciences perspective, reduce that cognitive load, right? Because so I'm not trying to guess about what's coming next, because every day is roulette. And I don't know if chaos over here is going to make it to my table and I'm not going to be able to do my work. If there is structure and predictability, that reduces stress, it reduces cognitive load so that they can put more brain power into the things that are fun and creative and interesting.
And it allows them to self-correct.
Mm-hmm.
John, what are you supposed to be doing right now? XYZ. Cool. Don't forget that done, bro. Oh, okay. Some random person walks in. This is, Joe, who's brand new to our class. Class, what we supposed to be doing right now? This. All right, cool. Somebody help Joe with the thing that we're supposed to be doing right now, and everyone is on one accord rather than, when you see honeybee colonies or you see ant hives, ant colonies, or honeybee colonies or ant colonies, whatever. Like everyone knows their role and they do their thing. And it might not look like creativity, but it's productivity. No one is worried about. We look at what this other person. I trust you to be doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, which is the other thing that, as a teacher, you have to grow into, is not being suspicious of the kids that you're collaborating with. And I think that's the other thing where oftentimes when you hear these conversations about the kids, you're like, you can't be suspicious of the homies, man. If you've done your job, the homie is doing their job. And I'm gonna drink my coffee and it's make the educated guess that because we have put the structure in place, the homie is doing what he needs to do. And if I can't say that, then that's a me as a management issue, not a them as a whatever age kid the kid is. But I think the other thing that was kind of an interesting takeaway today was, again, I often think, and I think, my experience as a guest teacher this school year, some of the conversations I had with high schoolers, when I asked them, does your teacher do collaborative groups? Do you guys have conversations about the things that you read or whatever? No, mister, because we're not in elementary school. You're like, that is interesting to me. And that's why that First Days of School, Harry Wong's book, is such an important book to read, whether you are a kindergarten teacher, a sixth grade English teacher, a high school, science teacher, whatever. That book really humanizes that process in a way that allows you to take the structures that are in the text and just wholesale use those things and get to a point that by September, you can do the super creative, imaginative things that you want because the kids know what's coming next rather than having to think about. One of the participants today was talking about trying to make changes in the middle of school year, and like that didn't work. Well, yeah, that doesn't work. If you've lost them by September, bro, it's not a thing.
That said, I would usually, when we got back from winter break, I would basically treat the January as another September, August, whatever, where I would go back, remind them of the procedures, like re-practice them again. But to your point, it's much easier if you have those procedures set at the beginning of the school year so that you're more like freshening up what they are versus trying to implement them in the middle of the school year.
Yeah, you use the operative term, remind them. Reminding you already know this, let's just bring this back forward. Cool.
Yeah.
Continue. If I'm trying to like reprogram the classroom in January,
it's an uphill battle for sure.
Unless you're doing a semester thing where you have a brand new class, that's a different situation. But trying to help somebody that has gotten used to a certain mode for half a school year and then come in and say, no, we're going to do it differently this time. Probably not. I mean, just think about as an adult, if someone in mid movie decided, hey, we don't like this direction anymore. We're going to do a different film, but I came to see this movie. But it's no longer the horror movie you came to watch. We're going to do a romantic comedy now. That might turn me off.
It's weird. Yeah,
that's all right. That's true. That being the case, we've got 3 more days. Tomorrow, we're really going to go into depth about scheduling and what scheduling looks like and how your system reflects the schedules. We're going to have participants look at pacing guides. It's going to be a very more interesting or more intriguing process this time because we have 2 participants who do not have pacing guides that are uniform to other people in the school district. That's going to be a very interesting conversation about how they mitigate that particular process. Before we end, the participant who happens to be a physical education teacher, on the way out, we had a conversation about lesson planning. Was there anything that was intriguing about that particular conversation, in your opinion?
I mean, I thought that it was interesting. I had never thought about, so I hadn't really ever put myself in the shoes of a PE teacher, to be honest with you. And so a couple of things that that participant has said have stuck with me. One of them being there are um, there are risks, like physical risks, to not following the sub plans for a PE teacher. Like it can be dangerous if you're not following the sub plans for a PE teacher. That and the idea that there are situations that seem to happen quite often where a sub will show up not knowing they're going to teach PE and not be prepared for it. Right? That's a very specific. Pretty much any other classroom you show up to, whatever you show up in is fine. But if you show up to PE in high heels, you're probably going to have a bad time. So the idea that like there is an additional layer of preparation required to sub for PE, and like more thought and care. Because like if you show up to a third grade classroom and you decide you're not going to follow the lesson plans, okay, so they lose a day of instruction, I guess. However, I feel like it's very different when you show up to a PE class and say, I'm not going to follow the lesson plans. And you could potentially get kids in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, you decided to play dodgeball or something like that because, hey, my day, dodgeball was something we could do in school or whatever. Yeah, I agree. And the thing that was interesting to me was the fact that having done the guest teaching gig, as they were talking, the biggest thing was, first and foremost, all the things that you say are like absolutely essential for a guest teacher to know. They need to know beforehand. I need to know that information before I walk in your room. When I pick the job up, I should be given, this is the things that are important, right? The story that I told them was, look, I went to an elementary school to do a fourth grade deal. I had stopped and got a peanut butter latte from a coffee shop. And I get into the school after asking for the sub plans in advance. I get to the school and there's a medical binder that says severe peanut allergy. Now, I had just taken a sip of the drink, but I had to go to the bathroom and try to wash the peanuts, taste out of my mouth and hope that I could identify this kid when they came in the room and stay away from the kid enough that they wouldn't get the peanut particles on them. Because you don't want to be responsible for injuring a young person, but I didn't know until I entered the classroom, which is, people bring prawn salads for lunch, or there's all these allergies out here. People should be prepared, or guest teachers should be prepared to navigate your learning environment without having to think about that. And there's a way to do that. Given here's my system, I need you to produce a sub plan based on these things, and every sub plan needs to have the medical information for it. It doesn't have to be specific. It just has to say there are young people that have these particular issues. We have a young person who has ADHD. We have a kid who might run out of the classroom if you don't do it. That just needs, kids don't need to be named. That just needs to be surfaced so that as a person takes that job, they're good. And also, again, the I guess the uniformity of email. Like, email is a way that we converse with people in 2026. It's old hat at this point. It shouldn't be surprise. Here are your lesson plans. It should be, I've had these, when I pick your job up, the lesson plans come with that particular situation, especially if it's a planned absence. Some kind of absence that's, oh my goodness, spontaneous, or something happened to you, and you can't get to it. That's totally understandable. But it was very interesting. The other thing that was interesting about that particular conversation is, as we build different tools and different concepts, the specialists in K-5 gets lost in the sauce, and you kind of commiserated with the PE teacher in question here about professional development. Can you go just speak a little bit about the professional development situation that you kind of brought up?
Yeah, I mean, one of my frustrations as a teacher was always that professional development the district provided was often geared toward first, second year teachers. It was always very much beginning of the career educator that was platformed or like focused on when it came to professional development opportunities. And you need different things in your first years of teaching versus your middle career years of teaching versus, hey, I've been in this for a decade and I need different types of professional development. And one of the things I often found lacking was a level of diversity that took into account the amount of experience an educator has, or even what their professional development history has been. I don't want to go to the same professional development session every single year for 10 years. I want something that is going to address my specific context of where I am in my career, what my experiences have been, and what my subject area is. So if I'm a specialist, if I'm a secondary teacher who teaches biology, if I'm a PE teacher, and quite often it just sort of flattens it out so that most professional development opportunities provided by the district are geared toward the very beginning first year's teacher, and that's it.
What is your solution to that problem?
I mean, for one, just thinking about your audience, like actually offering professional development opportunities that consider very specific, especially like the different eras of your professional career. I don't think there's a whole lot of, hey, we're going to offer professional development for mid-career teachers, higher level teachers, because the assumption is always, oh, you'll go back and get a degree, or oh, you'll figure it out for yourself. Kind of like we were talking at the top of this session, the idea that, oh, kids just will figure it out. You should know that by now. Just having some intentionality around offering professional development with those different, because I mean, they do that in tech. Like there are conferences that offer, hey, are you a senior software engineer? Are you a lead software engineer? Well, then these particular sessions are more geared toward you. This professional development is more geared toward you as opposed to a junior engineer.
I really think that the classroom operating system solves that particular problem, because I think you can really upskill your.
I'm super biased, but I agree with you.
I mean, as you continue to talk, I'm like, in reality, it should be a situation now where if you have that source code layer, I should be able to go into any PD and say, whether I see the connections for how this works in my classroom or not, let me sit here and acquire this information. We make the first pass of understanding, okay, this is what this vocabulary words, this is what this is supposed to do, etc. And then feed that into my system and have that become part of my lexicon and be able to be translated, and then really see, okay, I didn't think that worked in my learning environment, but it actually does if it is posited in this particular way. Because I think in particular, the PE teacher is noticing that now. And I think given the conversation we had as we were leaving, the opportunity is, here are the PE standards, which they said they were very slim and not very diverse, right? What does it look like to go and smash the ELA standards for K-5 into your PE standards and really look at the connections between them, the math standards, the science expectations, and say, okay, cool, I may not have to teach those standards, I might not be responsible for them, but there is a way I can integrate those things into my coursework without having to put myself out, because I mean, when you think about it, that is I'm not gonna say everyone, that's the fun of teaching. That's the fun for me of teaching, is the kind of the Frankenstein, like chimera type products you can make, where I can mix and match and play with my food a little bit and say, okay, cool, here's an opportunity for us to hit lots of standards in a very creative way and have kids present those things. Because we used, before we get out of here, I mean, we got so many things. I totally forgot we did Adobe Podcast today. And that was really a, like, ta-da, this is not super difficult.
Yeah, it was good.
that was given that. Like, what were some of the reaction for the participants in terms of the podcast? What kind of ideas did they come up with the podcast, if you remember?
Oh yeah, we had talked about. They said for multi-language learners, it's a great opportunity to practice their speaking. Also, for students who have to give presentations, like in the video game design class and the graphic design class, having them talk through their presentation, listen back to it, give it to someone, give it to a fellow student for learner for feedback. Those are all opportunities to be able to, use Adobe Podcast in their classrooms. They came up with those like real quick too.
Yeah. And so if you're not someone who's familiar with Adobe Podcast, if your students have access to the Adobe products and Adobe Suite, it's just a data agreement. I don't believe the districts pay for them. Just a dynamic tool. It's one of the tools that I used every time I went to a guest teaching situation. I had an opportunity for just kids who were writing something great. Let's use that as a script to podcast. So that is a tool definitely to keep in mind. Adobe Aqua as well. If you're someone who I'm not even gonna say little kids. If you're someone who needs an opportunity just to draw, to color, Adobe Aqua is wonderful. The iPad app is super dynamic, but you can use it on the web as well. Tomorrow's session again is going to be about scheduling. We'll come on afterwards, do the exact same thing we just did today. A little bit of recap, some reminiscing about what happened during the session, and also a situation in which, and at least locally, school year is going to be upon us very quickly. Tidbits, ideas, tools, and whatnot. As you watch, if you've got comments, questions, suggestions, or whatever, throw those things in the chat. We got another chat. Everybody send another thing in the chat. Have a situation in which those things work. That's going to be something we also do here. We've got webs. You still have not seen the Odyssey, have you?
No, I don't like going to the movie theater.
See, I enjoy it. I wear my mask still inside the movie theater. I'm kind of like paranoid inside of that. But the seeing it on the big screen is still kind of a thrill for me. We will discuss tomorrow when we do the recap. I've got some things from the Odyssey that we're going to kind of sprinkle in. So
all right,
tomorrow.
I look forward to it.
All right. God bless America.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, we'll catch you later.
Bye.